everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Farah Allen, who is the CEO of The Labz. Farah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
The pleasure's all ours. Pleasure's all ours. And it's definitely my pleasure because um, looking at that bio, I see we got another Yachty on deck, right?
Come on. Yes, yes.
Don't know. We are going to talk about the yard. We're going to talk about life here and there. But before we actually dive into all the great accomplishments and us connecting as yachties and things like that, just let the listeners know a little bit more about your cultural background and where you grew up.
Yeah, so I grew up in Miami, Florida,
Hmm.
and South Miami, and very heavy Caribbean area, very heavy of every nationality, Haitian to Cuban to Nicaraguan. I mean, I grew up around a lot of different people from, different islands. And my parents are immigrants. They, came up from Jamaica when I was, my mom was actually a nurse, had me in America, went back to Jamaica, lived there for a couple of years, we came back and basically, built the American dream,
True,
whatever
true.
that was, a house and building and, all those great things. So it's, one thing I learned from my parents, they have lifelong friends, lifelong networks. My dad, entrepreneur in construction. My mom, when by the time she retired, she ran a hospital, Mercy Hospital, in Coconut Grove, Miami. And so they were always just really hardworking. I didn't, you know, I didn't get a lot of advice that around doing things in entrepreneurship way, like, being this creative that I was. Of course, Caribbean
Mhm.
folks, they're like, you better be
True.
a doctor or a lawyer or
Yep,
something that
yep.
we understand.
Yeah, that's right. Something with a uniform.
Something with a uniform, on a regular paycheck. So,
That's right.
I did have difficulty even as an adult, kind of even today, kind of explaining what exactly I do. But yeah, it's been a great journey, and I think being Jamaican, it adds to what I do.
Mhm.
Adds to the swag, adds to how far I think I can go. We very cocky folks in Jamaica. We think everything's great. Our food's the greatest. Our islands,
Oh,
we got the greatest carnival. We got the greatest beach.
yeah, I'm not gonna lie about that. I'm not gonna lie on that. Like I feel like, you know, for some reason, when I connect with other Jamaicans, there is a sense of like we are the best, right? Like everything this it just and I say that also because of dance, right? All the islands are very vibrant for like music and dance, but Jamaicans like they make it known like we are dancers.
You're
This
dancing.
island has the best dancers. We
Yes.
make up the dances, we're showcasing the dances, we're backup dancing for artists doing the same. It's like, okay, okay.
Yep.
So I can
Give us
see
our
that like
credit. That's all we ask for. Can we just
that's
get our
it,
credit?
that's it.
Afro beats, can we get our credit, please? I mean, let's come on now.
Oh, don't start that conversation now.
I'll leave it alone. That's
Okay,
next podcast.
okay, you trying to drop a little something tonight. Okay, okay. So talk a little bit more about like you talk about Jamaica, right? And I want to know from your perspective, like that Jamaican culture, being in the household, right? You said mom and dad are both from Jamaica. What does that culture look like to you growing up?
Yeah, and my sisters, everybody but me, they picked on me for being American. In America, like my whole life, I was called Yankee,
Mm.
and I'm like, yo, y'all live here. I
And
have
could you express a little bit more to the listeners that don't know what the terminology Yankee?
So I mean, it was like they would, the term they would say Yankee. I don't know why. Jamaicans people say a lot of things and you don't understand where the origin comes from. But I was called Yankee. It wasn't a good thing, but it was basically me being American.
Which
And
is
I was the
crazy.
only one in the family that was born in America. But I never took it as an insult because I'm like, I I don't need a green card. Y'all over here getting green cards and
Yeah, you got to go through
look at
paperwork. I'm
that.
good.
Well, you're not gonna make me feel bad for being American. I'm free and clear in this country. But I think for me, it was a sense of community that I grew up with. I grew up with a lot of aunties and uncles that I wasn't, necessarily related to. I grew up in, excellence. You must get A's, even though I didn't. I was kind of the black sheep of the family, my sisters, and they were excelling. But I was, kind of working against the grain of the culture, right? Of what the expectation was for me. Because I was creative, I was born in America, I was influenced by American things. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to paint. I wanted to be weird and in the greatest ways. And I embraced that in other people. And that just wasn't, something that necessarily was great as a moving into the future of how I can like be myself and work and make a living. And so my personality is I didn't care. I was gonna do it anyway. I felt
The stubbornness kicks in.
I was very stubborn, and I'm glad I've converted my family from this box that they lived in into a new place, right? And because I was able to kind of step out of what they were, not the values and everything. I still have those values, but the the frame of how I saw the world, step out and say, I'll prove y'all wrong. And I did. I came and I did in a very graceful way. And now they're like, wow, kind of boasting
Okay.
me up and all this great stuff. So it's good. I carry the culture with me at all times,
We must, we must,
everywhere.
we must, we must, we must. I know a lot of the guests that have been on the show, when they talk about being Caribbean, right? At first, like you had mentioned about being called a Yankee, a lot of the listeners have expressed like being coming into America or whether being born here and having to have your family from a distant country, right? They always felt like there was a disconnect. Like they didn't know what side to pick, right? One minute you're hanging with your friends and you're acting like an American, you're doing American things, and you come home, you're being into your culture, and it's like that what side is the side, and kind of that the identity crisis, especially at a young age,
Mm,
right? You want to speak patois, but if you speak patois, you can't really speak it in school, right? And no
mm.
one's gonna understand it. They might question the words that you say. So it is a very hard thing, especially growing up. But were there any influences, early influences, to help shape your thought process in regards to going into
Yeah,
technology and innovation?
there was. So I lived in South Miami, an area called Perrine, Cutler Ridge, Kendall area, if anyone's familiar. And that area, there was options in high schools, and I went to the magnet school. It was like the bougie high school. You had to get in,
Come
right?
on, you gotta put the application in.
Yeah, yeah, you had to put an application in, you had to get in. For some reason, all the bougie Jamaicans and Trinis and Haitians were there. Like the lightest Haitians I've ever seen in my life. I would say. So all the light-skinned Haitians in Florida went to that high school, you know.
Oh no,
And
no.
we had people who weren't Caribbean wanted to be Caribbean. Like I had knew people that had better Jamaican patois accents that were from like Nigeria than I knew real Jamaicans. So I was like, dang, I thought this dude was Jamaican. He's not. He's from Ghana.
Well, that
So
goes
that
back to
we
that topic you said a little earlier. Afro beats, can we get our credit?
Yeah, well, we all the same people, that's how I'm gonna say it's all love.
It's
I'm
you,
I'm
I'm
about
saying we got to unite.
40% Nigerian, as ancestry would tell me.
That
So
is correct. I mean, our ancestors come from Africa,
yeah,
especially
our
coming from Jamaica.
ancestors
Like
come
when you
there.
look back at the slave trade and all those kind of things. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I get you on
So
that.
so that was one, right? The people who are more affluent that, kind of look like me, the kids, were I was exposed to that. My family in Jamaica went to a Presbyterian church in Jamaica, all right? And the same church was in Miami, the main church, because they
Okay.
did like, island churches. And that church was very wealthy. The president of Burger King and some other presidents, like very wealthy, predominantly white, wealthy class folks in Coconut Grove, Miami. And that's the church my parents was like, we're going to this church. And so I was also exposed to just those folks and different people. So it was kind of like hopping between multiple different cultures. My mom worked at a hospital, and that was a very wealthy hospital. And her patients would give her all kind of gifts and would go to all kind of places because her patients were very wealthy. And so it just gave me a sense of, hey, this is this kind of life I like to live. I'm gonna
Yeah.
strive for it. I'm meeting people that people, maybe other kids in my neighborhood weren't meeting, doing things. I used to go to Jamaica for 3 months. They used to literally drop me off and forget about me and put me at my uncle's house.
As
Cool.
most of us would.
I'm like,
We
I
used to
don't
dread
remember
the
you giving me a
summertime.
call. Yeah, summertime. I don't remember even getting a call. I didn't have a cell phone. I just remember
I
showing
didn't
up,
get a call.
getting me,
They were
right?
calling your uncle. They were
Yeah.
calling you.
My uncle worked at a resort, and which was like across the street from his house. And so he'll just I'm 12, he'd be like, go around, run around all day, walk home when you finish. And so I used to meet kids from across the world. Like, I'll probably be friends with them for 2, 3 days before they gotta go. But that's 3 months of me like meeting so and so from Austria, or this person from that place. And so I just had so much like little touch points of just the world that it did me really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And being around very diverse individuals, I know sometimes some of our guests have expressed that when they got to where they were in the States, it wasn't as diverse. They were the
Yeah.
diversity, right? But it seemed like you were in an area where, you know,
Yeah.
being at a resort, you definitely meet a whole bunch of individuals. So
Yeah.
it was that sounds good. And you're at a resort. I mean, all inclusive. Live your best life. I
That's
didn't
true.
even know you were 12.
Even though I was 12. I think also I didn't look at racism. Like, I would never know when someone was being racist to me. I just had my parents weren't like that too, because, coming from Jamaica, we're all the color of the flag,
Yeah,
right? And then going in Miami, it wasn't no much different. You're not, it was like we're the South, but not really. You're Nicaraguan, but you're not really white, you're not really the oppressor like that. So it
I
was
get you.
kind of like I didn't, I went to FAMU, but go Rattlers. I experienced that up there, right? It was segregated, like it's Black folks, and I loved it, but it's different. It's a different thing when you go outside of FAMU and you go into FSU, and you're like,
Yeah,
okay, this is black and white. This is just black
yeah,
and white. And I'm in Atlanta. It's black and white. I'm in Atlanta, so it's mostly Black folks here where I'm at, but it's black and white. So
yeah.
yeah,
It's it's you never know where you are in the parts of the world. You might be like in a predominantly white area, predominantly Jamaican area, Haitian area, but just being able to accept where you are and like kind of navigate through that is always a beautiful thing to kind of watch.
yeah,
Now, my next question, you'd be like, okay, let's talk about work now, right? Your
yeah.
first job. And what did you learn from that experience that drives you into your career?
Oh, I've been working for a long time.
I mean,
Yeah.
you probably were working at 12 at that resort.
I was working before that. I was
Oh,
selling Kool-Aid. I was
oh, well, come on.
repackaging Kool-Aid and selling it to those kids because they like, the fun packs.
Stop.
And I was like, yo, I got Kool-Aid at the house. Let me put some baggies. I was almost a drug dealer. Put some baggies together, sell them for 25 cents, turn a profit. That's how it all started.
She's trying to profit.
Yeah.
The question is now, did you profit?
I think I did. As I remember, I did. But
Because you start drinking your own Kool-Aid and mess it all up in the sales. You
that's
start
true.
going up to your clients with red lips. You're like, yeah, you want the cherry?
Well, you know what I did? I used it as a party tool too, right? You want to come party? You want to come party with me in this Kool-Aid? Then you got to be my friend. It was a great way to make friends. So it was
Okay, okay, sales rep over here. You should write a book on that. Selling at the age of to be under 12.
I was under 12. It was where candy was is money age. But
So then fast forward now, you're in corporate America, or
I'm
you
in
start
corporate America. I mean, during my teenage years, I sold knives. I learned how to do hair. I learned how to do makeup. I always made money. When I went to college, I started selling hair. I figured out, I was like one of the first customers of Alibaba. And so I figured out to import, export hair from India. I found
Wow.
suppliers. I probably was making about $2,000 a month in college as a freshman.
Boy,
And
a lot of work.
my mom was like, how my mom came to my dorm. I had an outside dorm, and I had like the first flat screen TV, and they're like, we don't understand what's going on. But from the mentality of, I can make wealth for myself, right? I'm in practice mode at this point. And I always knew I was in practice mode. And these things were just helping me understand commerce and sales and what was in demand and what wasn't in demand. Hair was in demand, hairstyling was in demand. I did those things. I made money very quickly. I
Okay.
went to architecture school, not realizing, how much architects make. Now, not to, say anything about architecture, but I thought I was going to make more than what the career like entailed for you to make. And so
Okay.
coming out of college, I had already put in a plan to where I wasn't going to do architecture primarily. I was going to do architectural construction because they've got paid more, right? And I was really wanting the financial freedom. That was what I was seeking, right? And that didn't work out as far as, the growth opportunities with me and
Okay.
who I wanted to be, the way I wanted to contribute to the world with all of my brain. I was very much kind of limited, and it was a man's world, and I was literally told kind
Okay.
of like, it's going to be about 5-15 years before we get you to this next position, because you've already surpassed where you can go right now. And we don't have any Black people or people of color in this next role, and the world ain't ready for that yet. I was told that.
Mm.
And there's so much complexities to where you are today, like how you got here. But I left and went to technology. Technology just seemed like a creative place. Like all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
that was happening there, it just seemed like opportunities. People would be, in their garage one day and yeah, they got $1 billion company. I wanted that. Like I wanted the sense of growth and to be able to use my whole brain, my whole of me. And so I
Yeah.
went into consulting, project coordination, project management. Focused on tapping out on my salary. I did that within 3 years, tapped out on
Okay.
management,
Okay.
started my own management consulting firm, started designing, because I know all the design tools. I was an architect. Started designing software, and I was successful with these very large companies because I added color. I made it more creative than
Okay.
black and
Okay.
white and gray.
Smart.
And so
Smart
they're
way of
like,
saying it.
yeah, it was me understanding that, people like to work in creative spaces. It doesn't have to look like rainbows and smiley faces, but if it looks like something that is more intriguing, the experience is going to be better and they're going to want to use it. And so once I tapped into just always delivering that, I was getting customers over Accentures, over McKinsey's. They were letting go of McKinsey's to come with me, and I was just little me, right? But I understood the simplicity of being
Yeah.
more customized with how you give people platforms. And so I was never involved in how these products went to market, how they pushed it out in the world. And that bothered me. That really bothered me that I wasn't, that wasn't my job. It's like,
Okay.
I run this company. I shouldn't be mad, but I was like, there's so much more I can be doing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to learn how to do it. And so I started Labs, the 1.0 version, primarily because I wanted to learn how to be the big boss. And nobody was giving me the opportunity to do that in the
Well, yeah.
technology world, like completely. So I gave it to myself, where I was
Do you
like, let
think
me
that
solve a problem.
not to cut you off, do you feel like that happened because you were of Caribbean background?
That's a good question. I never thought of that. I think
I'm not
it
saying it was the case, but I just want to know if you felt like that was a something, because you said like in 3 years you reached your max in regards to salary wise, but there was, you still felt like there was a ceiling above you. Like, did you feel like it was because you of your ethnicity? Do you feel like it was because
the first time when I was in construction, yes, it was very clear to me that was because they never had a person of color in any color other than white, Caucasian in the role that was my next role. And I was told that they're not, though they like me, they know I'm good. Their customers would leave if they did this right now. And so that was the initial move from there. As far as me kind of wanting more, that is just my audaciousness. I've always kind of been like, very certain. I grew into certainty of my capabilities. All right. And I thrive on X and being good at things. And that's just part of me. And maybe that's part of me being Jamaican too.
I was gonna say that. Let's go back to that, because that is a part of the culture, having that sense of prestigiousness. Remember how we were just talking about Jamaicans having like someone of that cockiness, or just like they're very they dress very well, or they present themselves very well. It's a part of the culture, so it's like it just kind of like slightly pours
Acceptability.
into pours that pours into your cup. So corporate brings you out to this next thing, right? Talk to me a little bit more about your company, the Labs, and what's that about?
Yeah. So Labs has had very many different pivots. I go where the market leads me. I'm too lazy to change the name. I always felt like I built a brand, so I don't want to change the name. But it started out as a music technology company back in 2018. I've said I'm good at networking. So I was able to get funding from Comcast Universal before I even wrote the first piece of code, which was great. And that was a really great business, despite the fact that I didn't have any funding to continue to do that business. And also, the music industry would have had to be involved for the company to take off at the levels that I wanted it to take off at. So it would have been a great small company, but not a great big company because of the lack of collaboration when it came to protecting the rights of musicians, which is what I was solving for. The film industry saw my platform when I was pitching, Abigail Disney, the Disney heiress, and Adrian, her partner, and they said this would be great for film and television and Broadway, which are areas where Abigail and Adrian had their own business. And that was the kind of the formation of this immersive platform where you see today. And so what Labs does is we take the concepts of VR and AR and what's great about that, where it's immersive, it's interactive, you have this community, but the problem with it, you have to have expertise as a business to build those. You have to have a budget, which is big. You have to have time.
Yeah.
And at the end of
Adding
the
all those
day,
factors.
yeah, at the end of the day, if I'm a small business or if I'm a department head that's not in charge of doing commercials for the Super Bowl, I can't afford to do that. It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't like quite capture what my audience needs. But immersive and interactive and better customer experience will convert better business. It will get people to listen to your podcast more, to get people to buy your product more, get them to learn better. Just the data is there. And so what we've built is kind of a web building platform, web and mobile, for you to build your own immersive experiences. We cut out all the things that VR has, put it into, convert it into things that you could do within web and mobile. And we make it as easy to use as Canva. And so
Okay,
that
that's
is
good.
the trick. So right now you cannot find a platform like that. Everything is for developers to be able to do easily. And You still have to pay them to do it and then maintain it and make updates. And in our platform, it's like your web building platform. It's like your Wix. It's like your Shopify. You can do this yourself and go to market yourself.
Okay.
And so we've been able to have really big clients. Delta is one of our biggest clients, Microsoft, Google, Hertz, Netflix, Amazon, Prime. I mean, we have a really good roster of clients that have been with us. Last Comcast has been our client for the last 3 years. Now we are going into like the more of the small businesses. We want to make sure that it's democratized. Like, you know, these big companies, yeah, they can afford to do this, but we want to make this how websites are now, should now, you know, present to the world.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned about the partnerships. I want to kind of talk about that a little bit more. You mentioned Google, you mentioned Microsoft. You got some big companies right there, right? So
Mhm.
and some of them you have some long contracts. What is the mindset or the strategies that have helped you to build those relationships in the industry with some of those giants?
Yeah, I'm out and about in these streets, you know, like I'm at the conferences. I'm having lunches.
You got to be on
I'm
the ground
having,
level, okay? Ground
yeah,
level.
I'm making genuine connections. These people, kids, you know, like initially it's just me being in a world, you know, being of help, right? And knowing who to do that with, right? Because I really feel like business is biblical, right? You know, there's so much businesses in the Bible, not to be too Biblish, but it's a good thing to find people to work with. And you are on the same page as to money, you know, good relationships make, you know, great opportunities for money. And so I find people like that who we can help each other through this life, right? We got about 100 years and we were doing life together. How can we provide assistance so that you win and I win through our shared resources? And I've always approached people that way because sometimes they don't. Sometimes people are like, by myself, and I'm just gonna
Yeah, yeah.
kind of stick to myself. You can't progress in life with that mentality. And sometimes people just need words and a person to show them, right, that hey, I'm gonna give you this and you know be of help to you. And this is how you be of help to other people. Like I'm showing you how me and John work together. Like John and I've been doing this for years, right? And sometimes it works out. Sometimes they're like stuck in that mentality of like, you know, I'm just me find me, right? And so,
Mm.
yeah, this has I almost forgot the question. What was I going?
No, you got just working with those giants.
Oh, the working with
Yeah,
the
you got it.
giants.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's all so far. It's been relationship based.
yeah.
People
You
who want
said
to
being
see you win.
authentic, or you
Yeah,
know what I'm saying,
but
showing up.
yeah, but at the end of the day, as a business, like the business, does the business need this? How do I fit labs into your business, or how does your business fit into how can we help you? Right. And so a lot of these businesses have the main issue, people aren't interested and attention spans are short.
True
We don't
that.
own our community. You know, all our folks are on all the platforms. We don't really own them. We can't retarget to them. All we use is email. Like everything right now, because of the world is changing, is static. Everything is static, un, un,
I
unless
give you
it's
that.
not. Unless it's not. And the I'm not is better customer experience. It's just innovation. And so
Yeah.
I'm in a good place where I'm offering innovation. People have most people have experienced a VR or they have gone online and did a very nice Zoom with the background, you know, like maybe it's something simple like that. They've experienced a better user experience. And so I'm bringing that into their world and giving them a product that makes that easier. And so when I am allowed to kind of pitch how I can bring their their company more money, get more sales and all that stuff. That's how I'm able to get into these organizations.
You see, that's that boss life. The
Yeah.
fact that like, because sometimes people land that big deal and they're like, "Well, I got it," but you've landed
Mhm.
a lot. Like,
Thank
and
you.
these ain't no like some small companies, right? So I could only imagine being in those meetings, and again, across the room from you, there's not someone that's Jamaican, It's not someone from the islands. It's not someone that's Caribbean. So
No.
there's a lot of those moments where you probably get that, in the beginning. I know a lot of the thought leaders that have been on the show, they talk about like being in those rooms now, being a leader and knowing that they're in a position of leadership and how do they operate because other people are following behind them. And I want to
Yeah.
talk about that experience for you. Like, what is that? How do you feel about you being in that leadership position, having those leadership roles, and how did your experience influence your approach to like empowering others?
Yeah, I think the leadership position, the bigger that you get, the it becomes more defined. Like, who do you want to be? Why are you doing this? Right? It becomes
You always
more,
gotta remember the why.
how do I help? What was that?
You said you always gotta remember the why.
The
Yeah,
why,
that's
because it's
important.
not easy. It's not easy, right? I remember me struggling one year out of many, but I remember me struggling and I was still trying to get how to do this, right? And I had, got some funded and I had employees. I had a team of like 8, right? And I'm struggling, I'm paying everybody get their good salary, right? And I was like not paying myself, or struggling to pay myself. And I remember one of my employees was like, yeah, man, private school. Then all my kids, he got 4 kids. He was like, yeah, taking my kids to, private school. They at this school. Like, dang, your kids go to private school. I was like, but I was able to help fund that. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, how do I become a leader where I'm able to encourage and bring people up in the world and
Yeah,
have impact as an employer, but also understand what my role is as as a CEO, right, as a boss, to make sure I have the right people that's bringing, making this all work,
yeah,
and I'm bringing them up, right? Like it has to all fit together to into something that works to bring this to broader audiences, right?
yeah.
So I'm
It's
always learning.
important.
Yeah, I've been out, there's always these milestones of learning that kind of open up new things that you didn't know about your leadership skills. But that's some. I know you had another question about
Like what
being in the room, right? With
being
the
in like this is where we're talking about. I was gonna talk about like more like the personal challenges you face as a woman of color in the position of leadership. So whether it was being in that room and knowing that you're the only woman of color, speaking up and saying what you have to say, or if it was leading a group of people that you didn't relate to at all. So
Yeah.
it goes either if you went to the left or you went to the right, you were still in the middle of the woman of color, and how did you deal with that?
I would say the biggest part of this journey is learning myself and being strong with who I am. And
Mm,
so I've had different places of that in this life because you know, I have newer challenges as I move up in the world. And so I would say, my perspective today, all right, I just came back from Dubai. I was at a family office summit in Dubai. I was the only person of color, and that woman was 3 Black dudes from Africa there. I was the only person of color. I had to be on stage, had to pitch my company. These are the biggest families in the AUE, right? Biggest family in Tel Aviv, biggest family here, there. And I did catch myself being a little bit intimidated because I'm like, everyone's kind of talking to each other. And I see new people talking to new people, but no one was like kind of coming to me. And I was like, oh, I don't like it here. I hate it. And I was like, but Farah, you came all the way up here because you had a task, right? Do not let this opportunity miss you, regardless of what's going on right now. Force your way in. And I did. I've kind of forced my way into these conversations, like standing there and ha ha, they laugh and I'm laughing,
that
I
important.
did. And something happened. Like people were like, oh, let me talk to her. Maybe I look friendly now because I'm talking to everybody. but it was solved. It was an issue. By the time the family office summit was over, I met everyone. I met and connected with everybody there. And so, you know, but then there's this next step. It's like I see people kind of taking folks aside and doing deals. I didn't know that was
Mm.
or how do I do a deal as a woman in this scenario in AUE where it's a man, you know, it's mostly men. And oh, my sound, okay, it's mostly
Yeah.
men. And so there's still you know levels that I'm going to as I'm moving up. And it's just really like, who can I ask? How does a woman, you know, deal in these situations? But yeah, it's not always, you know, it's not always something I have the answer to. I am in uncomfortable situations sometimes. I am in rooms where, you know, I better say my credentials. Thank God I made a lot of them. I got a lot of credentials. I'm on a board of a bank, you know, so Silicon Valley Bank.
Mm.
I wrote a book, you know, like kind of have to
Yeah.
like say these things and then be humble about it and see what happens. But if I don't kind of express my mind to folks up front in the conversation, then I may not get that respect from that next CEO or that corporate, you know, person. And sometimes I'll do that and it still don't work. But that tends to work. Like, but I had to like work. This is what a mentor said. That Farah, right now, because you don't have any social presence or influence, and this is when I started, you're pushing a rock up a mountain. You know, that rock is heavy and you have to push. You got to convince me that you're special, right? You got to come talk to me and have a 30-minute conversation with me to convince me. But when you put yourself out there, when you do certain things, that ball is going to roll down for you. This is going to roll and I'm going to reach out to you and you know other people are going to reach out to you. And once I got that got that really embedded in my head, I started doing social. I hate social. Hated it. I was so
That is
shy.
a that's a whole different beast right there.
Yeah, I started, and I don't even do it. I started to not be so, you know, I've started to be much more open about my accomplishments. Because I was like, dang, I've been doing that. I started putting in practice me talking about myself and how great I am. Like, oh, I couldn't say that,
Yeah.
you know, especially as women, that's not something, you know, people want you to say, right? Or that's what you think. And so me, I had to kind of form a part of me that now can say how important the work I'm doing is and just do it in a way that fits me. But I had to kind of
The,
release my fear of doing that.
the good thing about, you know, that I'm also taking away from the story is that one, you were in the room. So you got to give yourself a lot more credit, right? If you think about it, there's so many other people that would potentially love to be in a room like that, right? And not only are you in the room, but you're in the room with a position of leadership, right? And on top of that, you have a product or you have a service or you have your personality that you could share with people that could actually like uplift or maybe even change their mindset. So I know at that point in time, I mean, I could only imagine if you went back today, which you would probably do. So, but
Yeah.
I mean, the thought that you even that just sounds like, but I get it. You're in a room and you see these men making deals, and you're like, okay, how do I? You're looking left and right, like, so who's gonna come to me, or do I have to go to someone? So again, it's always good to hear these stories and know that the previous guests that have been on the show express the same things. Everyone's talking the same language. Like, you know, people being in corporate America and being like, "Well, I was the head of sales and I had to close the deal, but there's no one that looks like me on the other side of the table, and I had to convince this person that this." And I'm like, that just sounds hard,
Yeah.
but you did it. You were in that room and you kept showing up, and look where you are right now. What advice would you give for underrepresented groups, you know, particularly immigrants looking to break through and
Yeah.
accelerate the tech industry?
I would say that would not come into a situation even worrying about your color or your sex. I wouldn't even think about it. Yeah, it's there. Can't avoid, you're not going to change. I'm not all of a sudden going to be a white person or a white woman, you know. You're never, and why would you want to, right? You know,
Yeah,
but you have the opportunity to show people who you are. And, you know, if you're in those rooms and if you're striving to be in those rooms, it's because you're good. You have something to bring to the table. And I think a lot of times we don't say what it is that we are great at and how we can help other people. And that is the downfall a lot of times. And so, you know, you have to put yourself out there. You got to be your best salesperson. And I think, you know, that's outside of the norm for a lot of people. And I don't want to say that's a color thing, but I think people of color got to do it even more because, you know, who knows what people are looking at you and thinking, and who cares? But you just be the same person that's kind of like putting yourself out there at all times. You have a brand and people must know what that is. That has been tremendously helpful. And so it's a very much a confidence thing. People can feel your confidence. Um, and so have it, practice it,
yeah.
work on it,
Utilize it. And it's hard
yeah,
to. I mean, it's something we're always going to be building at the end of the day, right?
always.
Because every time we level up in our career, in our journey, in our life, in our relationships, the level of
Mhm.
confidence needs to uplift again. You know,
It
so
has
it's
to.
not like you're like, oh, I made it to level 10. There's another 10 more levels when you move up to the next
Yeah,
ranking.
there
So
is no big
it's a
boss.
that's
There's
right,
no
that's
big
right.
boss.
It doesn't stop. You know, you did talk about a little bit, and you kind of grazed the surface on it. You talked about failure a little bit
Mhm.
earlier in the conversation, and I want to kind of, not highlight the failure, but the story behind that failure and how you kind of got
Mhm.
got through it. But any story particularly that you want to kind of share of a failure or a setback that kind of like
Yeah. Well, I would say in when your story about setbacks, so I don't forget it, I would say the core of any high functioning person, you know, especially one in corporate America, is that you know, they don't experience failure that much, right? It's not something that is consistently, you know, you're not given huge projects all the time, right? There's no, you know, situations where people ain't gonna get paid if you know if you don't perform your one task, right? You just have a lot of people that's doing a lot of things, and you're not solely responsible for for it. And so when you know people like that who kind of see themselves as high achievers, it's you know come into entrepreneurship situation and they're told no over and over again, right? And you have to be told no to be told yes, right? For any sales, for any raising money or capital. It is a ego destroyer.
yeah,
And so your ego has to be destroyed a lot to be and be rebuilt, right? And that's why I'm saying you got to know yourself because it can't be about what it was when you were in corporate America. It has to be on based on something a lot stronger. And so but you're tested based off of how much you put yourself out there. And so for me, when I first developed Labz, we did it and I got funded. So Abigail Disney and Adrian, you know, they invested about $1 million for me to switch the platform totally during COVID from
mm,
a collaboration platform that's immersive for collaboration into a immersive platform for everybody to come in, like a website, you know, like a web building platform.
okay.
And I was like, yeah, I could do it. They got me they got me the biggest film festival. Not it wasn't Sundance, but it had like Robert De Niro, it had all these film companies, it had all these actors and stuff that were doing video conferencing in my system. They had Black Lives Matter folks, like everybody. And the platform was not 100% ready by the time this thing came. It was the most stressful. And me having to pivot just to deliver something at that time so that these people's thing wouldn't be canceled because it was all virtual. It was
Jeez.
such, and it was horrible. The whole time it was horrible for me. Did not go well. It was the biggest failure I had in my right? I was crying, and my employees that were there with me were crying in the midst of it. We were up for 2 a.m. like, oh, I can't believe this is so horrible. It was just, I didn't know how to take this. And that was like one of the biggest, like,
Mm,
turning points in understanding moving on, resilience. Right. I had to pick myself up the next day and continue. Right. And I think
that is hard.
something happened to where it was like Spelman reached out. It's like, oh, I heard you did this. I'm like, you ain't, yes, I call it failing up. Though I felt like it was the biggest
Okay.
failure of my entire life, people were like, yo, you had Robert De Niro on your platform? Like,
Yeah.
oh, that's something, that's
That's
cool,
again, you're in the rooms. Again, you're in the
I'm
rooms.
in the
So
rooms.
whether you feel like you're failing or not, you are in the rooms, and that means you are showing up. And
So
that is like every time you're dropping these stories right here, I just keep on saying to myself, but she's in the room. Whether you're like, I felt like I wasn't ready or I felt this, you were still in the room.
I was in the room.
Robert De Niro, you named some hitters. The
Yeah.
fact that you were in that environment, right? And again,
Yeah.
one of the greats, I know Tony Robbins, he says this a lot of times. I visited his seminar before, and he says proximity is key,
Yep.
right? You got
Oh,
proximity right there. You were in,
man. Did he tell you
you,
about the flight he did for the $30,000?
oh, oh, the
Oh
fly,
man,
oh yeah,
where he had to find $30,000. I was like,
yeah,
situation.
yeah. I'm saying so, like when you talk about this, I'm saying like, yo, that's proximity right there. And again, it might have you might have walked away from the situation and been like, well, I could have done a better job. But know that those opportunities keep coming to you. So you have an opportunity to prepare yourself for the next time it does come to you to actually level up and find that. But again, it comes down to confidence, you being ready, opportunities and
Not
preparation
giving
and all that
up.
kind of good stuff. But
Not giving up.
congratulations.
Be like, I'm leaving corporate America. This is too much.
Yeah, nah, you killing it. You killing it. Looking ahead, like what's the vision when it comes to the labs? Um, and like the broader impact that you're looking to do within the tech industrial.
Yeah. So I want this platform to be for everybody. I want the Canva user. I want the nonprofits to be profiting, to get those donations. I want this, it's not just technology, but it's a system of going to market to provide people better customer experiences, to still put your marketing efforts to work and your sales effort, your digital sales efforts to work, but in a medium that is current and to the time of where the world is going. And I want to be able to make sure that Labz is on the forefront of that. And when we are, right? No one's really paying attention to this. They're paying attention, they're trying to get everybody on these headsets where there are businesses that can utilize better experiences that are immersive without all of that, without all the avatars and people walking around and roadblocks. You don't really need that. What we need is, how do we get people to sign up? How do we get people to come listen? How do we get them to learn? And these are methods that through these years we've built up the know-how to do. And so I want to help bring this not just out into the hands of enterprises, but into the hands of every small business globally so that they can tell their story better. So that is the goal, and that's what I'm doing.
Well, you're definitely telling you definitely doing an amazing job, but you definitely did a really good job telling your story today on
Thank
the
you.
platform.
Thank
So,
you.
Farah, I mean, I thank you so much for just taking the time to express the goods, the bads, the uglies, right? I feel like a lot of the stories that you did express, and also just the culture, the Jamaican culture, being very vibrant. That's something. Even in the time of you talking about the story and it being a hardship, you still had a smile on your face right now.
Mhm.
Like, and I feel like that is something I love about our culture, where we're always like vibrant individuals. And I'm just talking about the Caribbean culture in general. So you're talking about a time where you're like, it was my biggest mistake, biggest failure, but you were still smiling as you were telling that story, right? Maybe you could laugh at it now,
Yeah,
but
do
you
it
know,
now.
sometimes some people they still holding that over their head, right? You're
That's
like, yeah,
right.
that was like a big mistake, but you know what? I got through it. And so thank you again for just being vulnerable, open on this platform